Picture this. The year is 2026. The United Kingdom, a nation once at the helm of a global empire, is in the throes of an economic collapse. It sounds like the plot of a dystopian film, but the warning signs are flashing, and many are asking if this could become our reality. We're all feeling it. The ever-increasing cost of a weekly shop, the energy bills that make you shudder, and the dream of owning a home that feels more distant than ever. There's a perfect storm of increased inflation, a severe housing crisis, falling real-term incomes, and ballooning national debt. So, what's pushing the UK towards this potential breaking point? How has the Indian economy, a former British colony, managed to surpass the UK's in size? The answer isn't simple. It's a web of interconnected factors, but one of the most debated and emotionally charged is migration. Today, we're going to cut through the noise. We'll examine the official numbers and explore the argument that the UK's current approach to migration is placing an unsustainable burden on its economy. Is the UK really borrowing internationally to house asylum seekers in expensive hotels while its own citizens struggle? Are thousands who enter on legal work and student visas now claiming asylum, adding to the strain? And could this, combined with other pressures, lead to a major economic crisis in 2026? Stick around as we unpack the facts behind this alarming prediction. Now, before we dive into the deep end, let's get a clear picture of the economic pain many are experiencing across the UK. This isn't just about numbers on a spreadsheet, it's about the daily reality for millions. Let's start with the basics: your food bill. As of mid-2025, grocery prices are significantly higher than they were a year ago. While the rate of increase is slowing, the cumulative effect is substantial. A typical household's annual food cost is now estimated to be around £5,023. That's an extra couple of £100 a year that families have to find. For example, a loaf of bread is around £1.40, a 2-litre bottle of milk is about £1.80, and a kilogram of chicken can set you back over £7. Then there's the cost of keeping a roof over your head. The UK housing market is a major source of financial stress. Forecasts for the end of 2025 predict a rise in house prices, with even stronger growth of around 4 to 5% expected by 2026. While this is good news for homeowners, it pushes the dream of buying further out of reach for many, especially with interest rates remaining a concern. Renters face a tough market too, with forecasts suggesting continued price growth. On top of all this, we have inflation. While it's expected to fall closer to the 2% target in 2026, it remained elevated through 2025, with rates in June 2025 at 6%. This persistent inflation erodes the value of our wages. Even if you get a pay rise, if it's less than the rate of inflation, your real-term income has fallen, meaning you can buy less with your money. And what about the national balance sheet? The UK's public sector net debt was estimated at 3% of GDP in June 2025, a level not seen since the early 1960s AS. The Office for Budget Responsibility has warned that the UK's public finances are on an unsustainable long-term path, with debt projected to rise significantly if policies don't change. This backdrop of high debt limits the government's ability to respond to crises and invest in public services. This brings us to the most contentious part of our discussion: migration. It's a topic that often gets hijacked by rhetoric, so let's focus on the data. The core of the argument presented is that the current scale and management of migration, particularly asylum claims, are creating a fiscal black hole. Let's address the claim about housing asylum seekers. The UK government has a legal duty to support asylum seekers who would otherwise be destitute. Due to a shortage of standard dispersal accommodation, there has been a heavy reliance on hotels. According to a National Audit Office report, the cost of housing asylum seekers is now estimated to be £15.3 billion over a decade, 3 times the original forecast. The cost for a single person in a hotel is around £145 per night, compared to just over £14 for traditional shared housing. In early 2025, it was reported that this was costing taxpayers millions of pounds every single day. This spending comes from the Home Office budget, which has been supplemented by the Treasury, and, controversially, from the UK's foreign aid budget. Critics argue this diverts funds from both domestic priorities and international humanitarian aid. Now, for the truly startling claim that a significant number of people who enter the UK on legal visas are later claiming asylum. Is this happening? According to a government report on 2024 asylum claims, yes. Of the 108,000 people who claimed asylum in 2024, it's estimated that around 40,000 had previously entered the UK on a visa. Breaking that down further, of those 40,000 claims, 40% or 16,000 people had held a study visa. 29% or 11,500 people had held a work visa. 24% or 9,500 people had held a visitor visa. The report also notes that nearly 10,000 people who had entered on a visa and later claimed asylum in 2024 required accommodation support. This trend raises significant questions about the immigration system. While some individual circumstances may genuinely change, making them unable to return to their home country, the numbers suggest a potential loophole that adds to the strain on the asylum system. It's crucial to balance this with the broader economic picture. Many studies show that, overall, migrants, particularly those from Europe, tend to contribute more in taxes than they consume in public services. International students, for instance, were found to provide a net benefit of £37, $4 billion to the UK economy in the 2021/22 academic year. However, the debate hinges on whether the current system, with its high asylum support costs and the trend of in-country claims from visa holders, is fiscally sustainable, especially when combined with the other economic pressures we've discussed. So, why does the year 2026 feature as a potential tipping point? It's not about a single event, but the convergence of these multiple pressures. First, economic growth forecasts for the UK in 2026 are modest, with various sources predicting growth of around 1.2% to 1.4%. This slow growth provides little buffer to absorb economic shocks. Second, while inflation is predicted to be lower by 2026, the economic scarring from the cost of living crisis will remain. Household savings will have been depleted, and businesses will have endured a long period of high costs and weak demand. Third, the housing crisis is set to continue. House prices are forecast to keep rising through 2026, further worsening affordability. This can stifle labour mobility and increase social inequality. Finally, the fiscal pressures from national debt and the costs of asylum support will continue to mount. Without significant changes, the £15 billion plus cost of asylum accommodation is a long-term liability. If the trend of asylum claims from former visa holders continues, this cost could grow. When you combine sluggish growth with high debt, a persistent housing crisis, and the immense unbudgeted costs of a strained asylum system, you create a recipe for potential instability. This is the scenario that has people worried about 2026. The fact that India's economy has overtaken the UK's adds a powerful psychological dimension to this debate. While the UK grapples with these issues, India is forecast to continue its strong growth trajectory. Of course, it's important to note the vast difference in population and GDP per capita, which remains much higher in the UK. Nevertheless, the overall trend is a source of national anxiety. So, is an economic collapse in 2026 a certainty? Absolutely not. Forecasts are not destiny, but the user's prompt paints a picture of a nation under severe strain, and the data we've examined shows that this concern isn't unfounded. The UK is at a critical juncture. The combination of a cost of living crisis, a housing emergency, and a migration system with multi-billion-pound holes in its budget presents a formidable challenge. The figures on asylum seekers who originally entered on work and student visas are particularly striking and demand a public debate about the integrity and sustainability of the current system. This isn't about pointing fingers or demonizing any single group. It's about a frank assessment of economic realities. Can the UK afford to continue on its current path? What policies need to change to ensure the system is both fair and financially viable? Now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe the UK is heading for an economic collapse in 2026? What do you think is the biggest factors? Migration, Brexit, global events, or government policy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's have a real, evidence-based conversation. And if you found this video insightful, please hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more deep dives into the issues that matter. Thanks for watching. Let's continue the conversation in the comments.